is your 5-minute geography lesson. We're covering Theme 1, Element 7, Floodplains and Levees. Equipment out, I'm Mr. S and I'll be your 5-minute teacher. Floodplains are wide, flat expanses of land on either side of a river. So like all the river landforms we've been doing in these lessons, let's place it on the long profile. So floodplains, as we've said, are wide and flat. There's only one location in our river profile where we're going to get flat land, and it's going to be at the lower. The upper and even in the middle is going to be too constrained by hills and mountains to provide flat land. So let's have a look at what is actually a floodplain. So I've got a photo here, and the floodplain is effectively this bit of flat land right the way around the river, even the bits that have been covered by houses. So on either side of the river we've got all of this flat land. So it's wide and flat, and that's the reason why people have built on it. So we've got this linear settlement here, and all of these housing estates and industrial estates over here have all been built on because it's flat land. And just off photograph as well, we can start to see some fields because the floodplain has flat land, and because of the type of soil that it is, which we'll come on to in a minute, is actually really good for growing crops. But a floodplain has a risky word in it anyway, the word flood, and they do come with a high risk of flooding. So you can see here the river, which has broke its banks, and it's completely flooded this linear settlement and even into these larger estates over here as well. So that's the same photograph just taken from a different angle during a flood event. So why do floodplains occur? Well, we can break it down into two different areas: flooding and river migration. And we're going to start with river migration because our last lesson was all about that as well. So when rivers migrate, or when meanders migrate, which we did last lesson, we know that they erode on the outside bend and then move in the direction of the erosion. Now, anywhere in the world, we're not going to find something that's perfectly flat. In the UK, we're definitely not. But what's happened is, as the river erodes outwards, any of the small undulations or very small hills, not massive hills, but any small hills are going to start getting eroded. They're being replaced with, on the inside bend, all of that material that's been deposited by the river. So it's eroding the undulations, the bumpiness of the land, and it's replacing it with flat material on the other side. So the meander is actually working a bit like a bulldozer, flattening out the land on either side of the river. The second element is flooding. So rivers flood when there's more water than the channel can handle. Then the water breaks its banks and pours the water out over onto the floodplain, that area around the river. Now, as it does so, it's losing momentum, it's losing its energy, so any material that's being carried by the river is going to get dropped. It's going to drop the heaviest material closest to the river, and as it gets further away, it'll start dropping the finer material. Now, this finer material is going to start levelling out even more the floodplain, or the land around the river. And it's going to start dropping things like sand, silt, and gravel. And that is actually really good fertile soil. All of that material, all that sand and silt, all the minerals in the water make this soil really fertile, which is what attracts the agriculture to use that land as well. And that in essence is a floodplain. Now, we've talked about how a river drops its heaviest material first, and this is represented by these dark green lines, and these are called levees. And levees are embankments, little hills on either side of the river, and they form naturally. You can get man-made levees, but we're not interested in them. Okay, so a natural levee is built as the river floods. It's going to deposit the biggest material right beside the river, and then every single time that river floods, it's going to keep depositing that material on the sides of the river. So over time, these embankments, these levees, get bigger and bigger and bigger. One outcome of that is that the river can now hold more water because it's actually made the river channel even deeper. But it means when it does flood, there may be more risk involved. It also means that it's harder for water to get back into the river after the flood event, and water can be trapped behind the levee on these sides. Well, that's it for today. But continue your revision by completing the Now Try It task for homework. Class dismissed.